Hello.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm new here, so I'm not sure what the etiquette is. Right.
We just hang out awkwardly until Julian wrangles the cats.
Okay, cool.
But you may
Uh,
have broke the ice.
well, I'm Ben, and I met him at the Come to UI meetup a couple days ago, last week. So,
There's
Amazing.
Ben. Ben showed up. Amazing.
hi.
Hey man. Yeah, we were at the Nerd Rodeo Comfy UI meetup. Amazing.
Well, I was looking at your 3D printer behind you, Ben, because I joke that my daughter I forced her to do a capital raise to earn herself and be able to buy a 3D printer because she wanted to start to create stuff.
Okay.
And I feel like a new
Used to call that
district like
allowance back in my day. Capital.
well like it was like she wanted the like higher end Bamboo Labs and I said you have to start doing some stuff and make a plan and pitch it
Put
pretty
together a
hard.
pitch deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, exact. And that's what she did. And then she like shook down, as we all do in the startup world, like friends and family first and those things. But I feel like we're like a new manufacturing facility over here
Nice.
because it's been nonstop even as she goes to bed. She's like, hey, like I just launched this one. I do want another one. It'll be about an hour and 37 minutes. Can you start the next one? I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to start looking for some either equity or payment to be part of this.
Nice. That's awesome. I just got into it myself. Um, just benefits of being an adult is if you want to start a hobby and you can afford to, you can. But yeah, that's awesome. That's how my wife, when she was 8, ended up getting a pony from her parents. Her parents were like, "You have to." They're business analysts, and so they were like, "You have to make us a PowerPoint presentation and walk through the pros and cons of what this would do to us and our family and our budget." And she did, and that's what they did.
There you go. I'm glad she's asking for a 3D printer, not a pony. So
You could 3D print a pony.
exactly. Something that doesn't have to live and breathe and be fed. So yeah.
Yeah, and do the other thing. Poop all over the place. I'm gonna mute Cora. There we go. All right. Office hours number something, 266 or something. So we got one side project share. Is that a Malbec, Scott? What are you drinking there?
It's vermouth.
Okay, nice. We got one share from Eduardo. So there's room for two more if anyone wants to game time just something that's going on in their head and what they're working on as a discussion starter. So keep that in mind. Anyone feeling anything?
Happy to share one of the projects that I'm working on if you
Okay,
guys
well
are willing to listen.
we'll slot newbie Ben in for the second one. So anyway, just kind of keep that in mind. You guys get the drill, hopefully. I don't, sometimes I've been getting notes from people who've been like, well, I haven't quite finished the presentation. I was like, don't overthink it. This is like as if you were sitting with your pals, at the corner table at the coffee shop or the pub. Like, I've been working on this one thing I'm wondering about. Is perfectly fine as well. I think that the tightest presentation we had maybe was from Corf. He had a whole deck, which is also cool. But like, maybe a little bit like Jordan's presentation last week, he's just looking for some perspective, and he has some ideas about, building his practice. And so that's also, and I really think he got incredible value out of that. So thanks for everyone who was like, yeah, let's get in touch. We'll talk more about what you're working on and try to help you out. That's really beautiful and awesome. Okay. Eduardo, how you feeling?
Well, I mean, I've never joined these meetings before, so I'm also like Ben, kind of just first time here, and I guess first time sharing. So
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna hand it over to you. It's a pretty mellow group.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, let's see. Do I have the abilities to share my screen here? I have a pretty. I'm just gonna talk through it, but let me share it. You guys might see yourselves here for a second. Yep, there we go. So,
And sorry, I just want to, so
yes.
I'll give you a signal as we're getting close to 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. I can't see anybody's face or anything here on the screen, so if you just want to jump in, feel free.
We see ourselves now. Yeah,
Oh,
now we see you. Now we see
there we
your
go.
perfect.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, my project is my side project is a web app, and it's called Toaster. And I really started creating Toaster to sort of scratch my own itch, I guess. Um, I was just kind of noticing at work that like as my role was kind of evolving, I was just having a lot more meetings, and I just started noticing all the different workarounds I had to keep up with everything going on in my meetings. It was always I'm working on something and I have to remember to talk about this later and talk about this other thing later and mention this to this person in that meeting. And remember what we talked about last meeting, because now that I'm in a different position at work, I'm kind of on the hook for remembering what we said and remembering what we're going to talk about next time, and making sure that I accurately remember everything that happened. And for a long time, there was a bunch of sticky notes on my desk, a lot of jotting downs on little note cards like these. Or on Figma, at some point I made a calendar with my meetings, and I would put post-it notes on meetings on the calendar to remember what to talk about as I work through things. So I made a little side project to kind of just fix that issue that I've been having, and it kind of ended up something I've been playing around with for a bit and called it Toaster. So this is kind of the landing page for Toaster. Um, and it says keeping up with meetings is a mess. And until now, and this is kind of a little glimpse of Toaster, but I'll do a short walkthrough in a second. And it has a couple of features here that I'll share, and just a place to join the beta. So how Toaster works is it syncs with your calendar. So when I hit login, I was signing with. Right now, we only have Google, and right now I should probably say, just to kind of set expectations, the Toaster is kind of like in a building phase. So we're probably rolling out like a family and friends kind of beta soon, but it's in the stage where we're working up towards that. So I'll sign in with Google. I'll choose my Google account. And this is how it syncs with your calendar. Oh, all right. Of course, we get errors on demo day. It looks like some of these work pretty well. So these are all different meetings that I have, right? And here I can do a couple things. I could just either, if I have this meeting going on right now, I can just jot down some notes. Maybe I got some things I need to I want to talk about later. I want to remember, and I can jot those down. I could do. Oh, Perfect. Okay, so I can jot down some notes. And something else I can do here is like the next, one of the things that was kind of important is to make sure there's kind of this like level of like continuity between meetings, because there's a lot of reoccurring meetings, and you want to you want to make sure that you remember all the things that you talked about, and you can plan ahead and schedule things to talk about next time. So what we did here was you can see your meeting history, and how that looks like is kind of just like a timeline. So you can kind of just scroll back and forth, and if these meetings had more notes here, you can see what you talked about last time and make sure that it's like, okay, this is where we left off, and now we can pick up where we left off. Or I'll be able to scroll to some future meetings and schedule or maybe add some agenda items to chat about next time. And I go back here. We have this, then I kind of ran into this other issue where I was having a lot of separate meetings that were kind of really about the same thing, and they weren't all just like reoccurring neatly like this. And kind of the whole branding of this like toaster thing was like meetings are boring, but the tools that you use like don't have to be. So I took a lot of inspiration from like how people used to take notes, like in how I remember people taking notes like in high school or college, where they made it really personal, and they did a lot of like highlighting and stickers to remember like different topics and all that sort of things, and it made it really personable or personalized. So one of the ideas here, one of these quick little ideas is this thing called like stickers, where you can add like you can add stickers for like a specific whatever you want it to be. Maybe my one-on-ones, maybe like the beta launch that we're having. We have a lot of meetings about that. Branding redesign or like a landing page. I'm just gonna jot this down as a one-on-ones. And that's just kind of like the category for the meetings. And anytime I can always unstick it, see all, or edit if I want to edit it. But I can also just go over here and click my sticker, and I can see all the meetings that have this specific sticker. And so it kind of groups everything by however you want to see them, and however that makes sense to you. And that's kind of where we're at right now with Toaster. We definitely have a lot of other things that we definitely want to grow into. I think if I had to give them into 3 topics, I think one would be collaboration. I think we would want you to be able to collaborate with other people who have Toaster. 2 is I think one actually big topic I think is like action items. There's often action items with meetings, and I think we have a couple of ideas that we're excited about how we can handle action items. And I think the last one is this whole thing of like transcription and recapping meetings with AI. I think is definitely an important piece that I think we're definitely looking for down the line. That's a short demo of Toaster.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So now's the time when we
So Eduardo,
yeah, I knew Sandro's got something.
yeah, well, this is my, I love these sorts of things. This is kind of where I
Awesome.
go. What you've made is beautiful, and it's friendly and playful, and I don't think it's going to fit into the business world. And for 2 reasons. One is there's already too many of these tools, and also with obviously everything with AI, et cetera, all this stuff is being automated away, and it's already going to be part of the suites. I don't mean to be. I'm sorry. I want to back up. I'm not trying to discourage you at all. I may be completely wrong, obviously, but I think this would be great for young people and and something very simple, not really about meetings, but more about like the party, your sleepovers tonight, or the party with the classes tomorrow, or in some way for them to engage with their schoolmates and even the school, for just keeping up to date with what's going on, so they feel a little bit of agency. And this because they're going to need more of that. I think as we move forward, people are going to have to control their own education. That's a whole other conversation. But AI is coming, education is different now. But with stickers, I mean that's just a very natural and very effective and proven effective way of engaging young people. And again, your designs are really lovely. I really like the initial. I don't know if that was a deck screen or like the splash page for your site, but with the toast in the background, and it looked really nice. The blue, kind of the blue and white, if I'm recalling correctly. Anyway, that's all I want to say. I think this would appeal to young people, not as in a business context. And I want to preface all that by saying I think it's amazing and really well done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of feedback that I'm looking for, so I appreciate that, Sandra. So thank you very much.
Mind if I ask a question?
Yeah.
Actually, I just wanted to first ask, like, why are you working on this project? Is your goal to like take it to market and like turn it into like a business, or are you using this to learn? Because like there's a lot of different types of feedback I could give. I'm just wondering what type of feedback you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess candidly, right now it's a hobby. I mean, we'd love to share it with as many people as we can. I think that's definitely a goal. We'd love to share it with as many people as possible. Um, but I mean, the question around like like monetizing and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a bridge we haven't crossed, and something that definitely need to think about more. But I think we'd love to share with as many people as we can.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess if that's the goal, then I do agree with Sandro that like it's a very crowded space and there's a lot of different things and it is definitely being eaten by AI. And especially in the user experience side of things, where like you have a very so I do have a background in events management. I worked at Riot Games for a bit on doing events and background running esports tournaments, and um, the user experience that you're having is like, hey, like uh, the system needs to know that the event's happening, and I'm gonna be looking through my system, and once I'm there, then I'm gonna start taking my notes about that event. I think one of the places where AI is really transforming this particular space is that you don't need to do that first, right? Like I could just open an app, start taking a note, and AI has all the context about like, oh, I'm in a meeting right now doing this, so that should be attached to that. So in terms of like the workflow of actually taking the notes, I think that that's something that is a direction that you might want to, look into. But I just also really wanted to say I really picked up on the stickers as like a really big positive. I think you took something that like give the user functionality that they already want to do, and then add features that makes their lives easier around that. That's really good. So I want to say kudos for that.
Sweet. Yeah, that's all great feedback. Yeah, I appreciate that, man.
Thanks for that, Ben. Mateus.
Evening, y'all. I missed the first 5 minutes. So perhaps you said it already, but what was the like? Have you done any upfront user research? What was the impetus for starting this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the impetus for starting this was really to like scratch my own itch, that my own kind of frustrations in a workplace with like a bunch of meetings, and I think like my growing role kind of demanded me to kind of be a lot more organized about meetings and discussions and what we talk about and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it was really kind of my own frustrations, my own problems, and then I
Okay,
did kind
so
of
so
venture
so
out and ask other
okay.
people, but yeah.
Okay, so it's like you're the user and you're trying to solve your own problem basically, and then seeing if there's attraction among others.
Hmm.
All right. Yeah, I mean that's good. I'm thinking the stickers thing. I mean I like them and you see them all over the place. I posted a link to a website builder called mmm.page, which came up a couple of years ago, which is really nihilistic about accessibility and rules and everything. And it's a really fun playground, very much like MySpace vibes. And that I think is a good, for me, it was a good and like fun example of how to use stickers and uh, temporary, like fun stuff, right? The way the stickers are presented here, I get the aesthetic, but the usage looks like tags. right? Because you had the sticker of 1-on-1, and then that becomes basically a sorting tag. So I would, if you want to like draw people in with the fun, playful aesthetic, make sure that it doesn't just feel like a tacked on. It might as well just said 1-on-1, right? In that case, but does it give any more playfulness to the user, or is it like not just, but is it just a prettier picture instead of having a text box, right? So I would lean harder into trying to see, okay, what are the playful aspects that I can bring to this, right? Because as others have said, it's crowded space, even if you're solving for your own problem.
Right.
So, right. Anyway, fun, nice to see.
Thanks, Mateus. Corf.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add kind of reference from my own project. Like, I think just having the vector of the space that you're exploring, which is the future of meetings and how we organize them mentally or whatever, I think is really interesting. And that, like, not thinking about the form factor right now necessarily of the solution, but thinking about the vector and opportunity space, at least for me, is like interesting, and it helps sort of make it easier to just be wrong or not even be sure. There was a great quote, and I'm forgetting who he is. He's a designer from Toronto that said, like, where should I start? And then start anywhere, that I use all the time. And it kind of seems like you're starting anywhere, which is cool. So kudos to the work so far.
Interesting. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Heather, did you raise your hand or were you saying hi?
Yes, no, I raised my hand very shyly. um, a potential other use that came up for me was like college students taking class notes. I feel the aesthetic plus the tagging feature could be really interesting for that, because a class is basically a meeting in a lot of ways. And you have people who also, once you get into upper division and graduate, you're going to have one-on-ones, you're going to have discussion groups, all of that good stuff. I think that would actually be a really fun way to organize it. And I don't know like how connected you are with that space anymore, but like there's totally a subculture of like people being really into like washi tape and stuff like that for making their organization for college just more fun, more bearable, make the experience that much better. So I don't know, I think that could be kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Scott.
Just building off of Mateus's question to you, considering the commercial space is so crowded already, and the origin of this is your own frustration, why don't you just obsess on making a tool you love using only? Like just go nuts. If it's a hobby, double down on the hobby part and make it as wonky, I mean, as Eduardo as possible. And whatever that, I'm thinking, Julian, like Zach Lieberman or even Golan.
Sure.
I'm thinking of those guys who are amazing creative technologists who just built a lot of their own tools. There might have been some similar commercial thing, but they just went deep down rabbit holes making their own tools, and they're amazing, right? They're all lovely and have their own personalities. And I think maybe that lends a totally different criteria for what is working, not working, like utterly subjective, and can have the idiosyncratic quality of what you want. And it allows a different kind of exploration, which might be more interesting than trying to measure it against like a lot of what's going on commercial. You can look at what's going on commercially, right, as best practices for some things, but I don't know, based on the root of this coming from a frustrated thing, I would encourage you to do or consider that at least.
Yeah, I think that's it's really good to hear that, because I think like as I'm working on it, like you feel like just like a gravitational pull to kind of do like a like because there are so many things in the market, or you feel this like pull to kind of do what's already kind of out there in a sense. And there's always a lot of hesitation when like trying to do something that kind of looks and feels and has like wonky things like stickers or whatever. It feels like there's a lot of hesitation there. But I thought it was really cool and fun, and so we did it, and that's
Yeah,
probably
lean
all that we
into
really
that.
need. Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking also, like, do you know Brian Eno's oblique strategy cards? They're like
Uh,
referred to, I don't know, sometimes every month maybe in this group. But it's just cards he wrote for, to push during the creative process. That's a general
mm,
description. But they're
I
they're,
see.
for him. I mean, originally. And they have weird, like super, but like, what would a dolphin say about this? They're just weird questions to just
Mm,
like, there's not you can't measure it against some like KPI in the corporate world, but they're
yeah.
beautiful for the reason, they were created. So I think there's a lot of rich space to go um, for exploration.
Hmm.
Yeah, and tagging on to what Scott just said, like if you really lean into what you feel is missing from existing solutions,
Hmm.
then you can actually solve a very particular problem, and then you might find that, okay, I'm the only one in the space who actually merges like all the t-shirt colors of all the people and match them to my mood or whatever, right? I'm thinking of all the people who obsessively come up with their own macros and stuff for Obsidian or Notion, those like potentially enormous systems.
Hmm.
And that's also like people used to customize Vim or
Yeah.
sorry, or Vim or whatever. But um, so yeah, I mean, see what you really want to have solved, I guess, and then because then you can speak with passion about this was really annoying to me. Maybe it annoys someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like bringing up like a city like Obsidian Notion and all that sort of stuff. I think it's like a really interesting like place to start because I've I've tried kind of using those tools as well, and I think that the thing with those tools is like it's like just a bunch of empty Lego blocks that you can do whatever you want. Like it's anything. You can make a meeting notes thing, or you can make a whatever else you want to make. But like the onus of being organized is on you, and like the app isn't exactly like Notion isn't exactly the most helpful thing to stay organized because it's really your responsibility. You got to find the organization structure. You got to make sure you keep up writing the entries. You got to make sure you do all those kind of things. And even though it's like a very common place to do anything and everything, it's not exactly the best place. Well, I guess in my experience, the organization only lasts like 2 weeks, and after that, it's a mess again, and I'm back to square one. Um, so
Yeah,
that's been kind of yeah.
I'm
Sorry,
in the same place. I've tried all of those systems like for 1 week and 2 weeks, and I'm going this time it's really going to stick. It never does. So
mm-hmm.
maybe like really go for being extremely prescriptive, right? You
Yeah,
instead of having those stickers and tags as optional, force one category onto it. I like the bullet system, like the bullet journal system, which only allows like stuff to do, move it to the next thing, or cancel it out. And after a while, you do a review and then you throw stuff up. It doesn't apply to the stuff that you're trying to cover, but the very prescriptive way that the bullet journal system works, I
yeah,
find is liberating because I'm forced into that solution, which is good because obviously I can't come up with my own solution.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly it. Like I think like the way we differ from like those tools is like those are very freeform tools, and we're like you said, I'll use your word, we're extremely prescriptive on this one way because yeah, for the reasons that I said, it just the responsibility of being organized should be on the tool, not on me all the time.
I just wanted to jump in and say, like, I think in a lot of these like project managey spaces, there's kind of like a vector of like, is it an opinionated solution where it's like you use it the way that it wants you to use it, or is it like a configurable system like Notion or Jira or whatever, where it's like it can do anything, but you have to put the time in to configure it and set it up to make your own workspace inside of it. And I think just I'm a big Notion, user. And I think it is a common misconception about those platforms that they like, that you can't really do a lot out of the box with them. It is by design because their product is it's a platform where other people can make money and monetize. So rather than the core product itself having opinions about a workflow, it's like, well, we're going to let people create these really opinionated workflows and templates and then sell those templates to other people. So if you're not liking the out of the box Notion, you might want to go actually pay $50 for one of these out of the box like solutions that has an opinionated workflow that you might, get inspired by some of those things too.
Mhm.
I'm really excited for you for making your own tools, whether or not it's got a commercial potential. And it's fascinating is because I build a lot of my own tools, and oftentimes I really like the last one I was working on, this ghostwriter thing. Um, I was internalizing its commercial potential because and what I realized I was feeling was was this kind of like, oh my God, this is so cool. Of course, lots of other people are going to be into it. And that flipped really quickly because of the world that we live in. And to be like, this is $1 million idea here. Because you connect, addressable market with multiply that by $9 per purchase, and you're like, I'm rich, baby, I'm rich. I'm gonna get a mansion and a yacht. And I think that I realized, and um I saw something similar out in the marketplace. It had been around for a couple of years or whatever, and I got depressed. And my friend, who I've been kind of like collaborating with, we talk like once a week, and he's like super, he's just, and I was doing it for another purpose. I was doing it for a creative project we're working on. I was like, I think this could be a tool within our creative project. And then I told him, I was like, man, he's like, are you mopey today? I was like, yeah, I'm mopey. I've been rugged. I've been rugged. Someone else already had this idea. And he's like, well, dude, I mean, it's not a bad idea. But you just thought, you felt into its potential. And it's not to say that it couldn't be, right? It couldn't be another I think it's probably easier to go into a marketplace where there are other options. So the marketplace is already tuned into the problem. Otherwise you introduce something that no one ever thought that was a problem. They're like, what? I don't get it. This is totally fine. I can already get there are a bunch of places that have wheels on luggage. It's nothing new. You saying your wheels are better? Okay, well tell me why. Or whatever. So I think so that was a reminder to me that sometimes you're just building your own tools, and you should do that. I think the what Scott was mentioning, as this is such an Eduardo thing. This is my hobby. I'm enjoying it. And I also think that you might find, following your path in a way, where you're coming from, and reminding yourself that it's like, yeah, maybe this is something that I can sell. Maybe it's something that just kind of goes up and we see what happens. I don't know. But also that it might flip at some point and be like, actually, I know I was building this calendaring kind of note taking, help clean up my, the complexity of my meetings and stuff. But then you find one little thing on the inside. It's like, actually, it was that I was chasing after, that no one else is really indexing on. And it could be just stickers. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that it is. I'm
Mhm,
just saying,
mhm.
like, you find that little thing. Like I found that with Ghostwriter. I was like, yeah, this tool's kind of cool and everything, but when I shared it with people, they're like, this little mode right here, that is super fun. I would have that. And it wasn't even, it was an accidental little thing that I was like, oh, this might be kind of cool. This little feature, let me add a button for that feature. And now I'm not saying I'm trying to make something commercial, but it's like maybe I should just focus on that one little unexpected thing that came along because I was sort of free of having, like a product manager harping on me saying like, focus on this, focus on this. We're building the app. Anyway, that's my sort of reflection on what you're doing. But I think overall, like building your own tools, I mean, that I think is fascinating, particularly in this, whatever, I sort of bite my own tongue when I say it, like vibe coding era, where people are able to build their own tools, who maybe before wouldn't have or wouldn't have even know what that meant. I wonder what it would be like if I could just have a little widget that would take care of this little thing. I will see, the jury's still out, but I find that super encouraging. Good stuff, man. I mean, I'm so glad that you shared that for real.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, I appreciate the feedback. I think it was very honest, and I loved it. And so I appreciate the feedback and the encouragement. So thank you. Thank you all. And nice to
Yeah.
meet you all. First time here, so it's nice to meet everybody.
Yeah. Hope to see you again. Yeah.
Definitely.
Um, cool. Thank you. Seriously. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Um, now I totally forgot who was going to share something. I know, Sabrina, you said, but
Yeah,
also,
someone was ahead of me in line. So
yeah, who was that?
Was it me?
Oh yeah,
Or
Ben.
yeah,
Sorry. So
yeah.
sorry.
So I'll just start quickly. My name is Ben, new to the group. I am unfortunately a product manager, so I definitely fall into this category of like, is this a business? And like, I also, have ADHD, so part of, me chasing my passion is this like, could it be a viable product? I'm really focused on that stuff. So, but it's definitely one of those things where it's like I try to find or the project I want to share, kind of like I want it, but I'm like also driven because I think so. The type of feedback I'm hoping to get is kind of like, if people know how it's done, or whatever. Um, just kind of like that. I guess, yeah, I have a background in math, mostly B2B work experience, and I want to share. I'm working on a kind of 2.5D image to 3D conversion process. And hilariously, I actually do have a deck that I would like. I think in decks because I'm a product person. So the first time someone asked me, like, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, we just throw a little deck together. So I'm just going to share that if you don't mind. Um, yeah. So yeah, working on 2.5D image conversion. I'm really fascinated by AI and how fast it's moving, and also the productization of AI. I think that like anyone can get anything like very decent results out of the box, but it's kind of like how do I take it that step further and actually get consistent results at a good price and worth doing. So at its core, it's basically I wanted to use AI to separate an image into layers. So you kind of have like your text, your foreground elements, your subjects, and your background. And really, I just want to be able to create cool 3D printed versions of the image. I've been really fascinated with getting out of just the pure digital marketing ad space and like physical creation stuff. So this is really fun. And there's a lot of products in the market these days that are kind of like hobby things. And I was like, hey, how could I use AI to kind of do this myself? Um, and so, for me, it started off as like a learning project. I'm into Dungeons and Dragons. Eduardo, I saw one of your tabs very briefly. And I'm into like magic and I have these collectibles. And I just wanted to be able to create something in that space. But I do think that there's like a larger business opportunity, like there's in-person signage and events, collectible, the custom collectible, modern family portraits, all kind of stuff. So like the ability to just quickly take a 2D image and reliably create like a 3D-ish product is something that's, excites me, right? So we're basically like take any image, trying not to get too technical, but I don't know the audience here, but any image, separate it out into the masks and the depth maps, use AI to infill any layers that are missing based off the content being on a higher layer, generate the mesh, print it, and kind of assemble it. It's kind of like how it would go. So far, I've got it to generate a mesh. I'm still working on the printing part of it. We'll see how that goes. So this is just an example. I took a friend, liked the game, so I just took the cover art, threw it in. I did spend some time massaging the results. So this is after, kind of like I'd say about 10 or 15 hours of customizing the AI tools and the pipelines around it. So I was able to get it to do it, but it's just like not, great. Doesn't do any of the infilling. It's just like a simple thing. Um, and technically I could open it in the 2D file format, but it's not printable, right? There's still more work to be done to make it something that would actually be able to be printed. So, I mean, the really hard part is, kind of all of it, but kind of, so, the image, the masks and the depths, like nothing off the shelf quite works well enough. And gets very technical very quickly, and it's like I'm having a lot of fun learning it, but it's, why it's a hobby side project. And there's this kind of idea of panoptic segmentation where it's just like, can the system understand what's relevant in the image? And that's like a really wide space with a lot of research coming out of it very quickly. And so like fundamentally, this is like a very hard thing to do, even though technically it seems quite simple. The infill layers are fine. I think one of the biggest issues is like in this space, there's a lot of like kind of named entities, right? So it's like if you're trying to print a collectible, it's a very specific thing. It's the same reason why, hands had like 6 fingers at the beginning of the AI thing. It's like the AI doesn't know that specific IP, so it can't generate that specific IP. So there's a lot of issues going around there. And then the mesh generation is just hard. You have to like do a lot of stuff to facilitate the actual manufacturing process. Yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at. I've got it. I'm excited. There's a lot of really cool research going out. It's fun to dive into it. And I think like this whole idea of taking something really simple with 2D and turning it into a 3D thing is just cool. Yeah, and what I'm working towards or whatever, like I definitely, do see like some sort of like SaaS type solution where it's like a self-serve product. You just upload your photo, you click your product, you can do it. Ideally, only like 1% of people would actually need help, and then you'd have some sort of like paid services or enterprise or whatever. So, I think it would be cool to go this direction, but really I'm just kind of exploring it and seeing where it takes me. So it's my product managery version of this hobby.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Benjamin. I'm bummed that well, Jed, who's been doing a lot, trying to figure out a lot of this 3D segments a holiday, so he's off camping with the kids. Um, and Brandel as well, who works at Apple in Vision Pro team. But I'm sure he'll listen back to the tape. I thought I saw him sign up.
I did use the Vision Pro as my depth model, so I would love to
Oh,
meet
he would
Jed.
love to hear that. He would
Yeah.
love to hear that. He would be totally freaking out right now, in a good way. But the problem space that you're working on definitely has been a topic in bazillions of times, how to do that, and there've been experiments definitely to make to do that. So you're amongst the right group of nerds. Cool. Anyone? Yeah, I'll just.
I mean, it's definitely far more technical than most of my understanding goes, but as a fellow D&D nerd and someone who just like has lots of folks and friends in that space, I think it would do well. And it's just fun. It's like sometimes it's nice just to have things around for fun, right?
Games Workshop is going to sue you out of existence if you don't get that right, though. I'm thinking like from my understanding, and I'm not familiar with the technicalities of the space, but it looks like sort of like photogrammetry into CAD into an STL file and then print, right? About a simplified like click and point and shoot approach to it. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to come up with like if you actually can speed this up. You mentioned dates, right? So people a couple of dates, and at the end of the date they get a souvenir. So they get a small cake in the shape of their heads or something, right? So or whatever. I mean, if you can get it to that speed, that would be kind of a new usage. You can already do that, but then you need to have a baker on hand who actually is really good.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting. I was thinking more along the lines of so I've seen, or I get advertised these a lot. So like I bought my wife and I, it's like a paint by numbers kit as like a date, like a stay in date night. So you spend like 80
okay,
bucks,
okay,
and so it's like you can
all
turn
right.
any image into like an activity that you can do together, and at the end of it you have like a product. And so
Ah, I get it.
kind of like, oh, like here, like turn any image into this little like kit that shows up at your door, and then you can assemble it and paint it, and spend time together.
Oh, like okay, I've seen the videos of like couples doing a portrait night or ceramic cup painting or whatever, right?
Right.
Okay, so product idea, then you create a model of a deceased pet, and as a part of the mourning process, people get to assemble the pet and then put on the mantle, right? Okay, yeah.
To go back to my kids. Oh, sorry, Scott actually had his hand up, being very un-Canadian.
Yeah, settle down up there. Go ahead, Scott.
As another Canadian. I'm wondering about I was looking for I can't find it, but essentially the literal translation that the path you're on right now is like try to like in a quasi-realistic way convert to 3D. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. Like you could convert it to any three-dimensional likeness. So it could be, Legoize it. Like I'm just thinking of any kind of like basic three-dimensional plaything that has a formal vocabulary. It's another path of exploration that might not, I don't know so well. I'm trained as an architect, but like I don't know so well um who's working on that, but you can own that because it's the formal thing that you're translating into is yours, right?
Right.
Versus
Yeah.
realistic.
I think that that's one of the really cool spaces about AI and all this kind of stuff is like AI can generate a lot of different stuff, but it's like I think that this specific format is valuable for X, Y, and Z reasons, and I'll train it to do that so that I can then go do those things. Actually, so I have a son, he's 5 years old, he's just getting into Minecraft, and I actually saw someone build a generative model that's like text to Minecraft house, an architect. So it's like build me like a small
Yeah,
log cabin kind of thing, and it goes and
right.
generates the thing. And I think, yeah, like I think it's really cool that you can do this kind of stuff. So it's not a big leap that you can do like an image to like a Minecraft house or whatever at the end of it. So yeah.
Okay. Uh, it's not necessarily where Scott was going, but I was like, I love the like imperfect perfection of this. So I was thinking of like the kids and as you're talking about like here we just need to make it better so that it can create sort of that rendering. I think about like how does this become part of the process of it's getting you 40-50% of the way there, especially if it's something original. And then you're doing the slicing, you're doing the shaving, you're doing those sort of things to create this artifact and be able to round it out. And I just think of all of the things that and it's my kids like wanting to bring stuff to life that's creative for them or some of the coursework that I love to see that is rooted in some sort of design element where they're trying to bring something to life for a prototype. And I think we're always trying to look for that level of perfection. And it's not for this community, but other people I work with are like, I want that polished finished thing versus like, what is a system that's built for prototypes specifically? And then, yeah, human, you actually have to do the work to finish it off.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of companies in this space. A lot of them, the bigger ones are like A16Z back. Um, and then so like right now there's like I saw like an ad for this thing called Meshi. But there's another one, and I think that a lot of the like right now I'm noticing there's a lot of focus on that human in the loop process where it's like how do you not necessarily create the final like perfect thing, but how do you give the
Mhm.
user an interface to allow them to kind of like have checkpoints, like is this good, is this good, is this good, kind of along the way. And I definitely see this with like in the games industry. Obviously like they're trying to like prototype and come up with stuff, and it's like yeah, basically everyone's like okay, that's good, it gets like 50% of the way there, and then a human takes over and like finishes it off. And I think that that's like honestly like I use the Funyun V2 model or whatever, and it's off the shelf. It works. Like I literally took a picture that my 5-year-old drew, put it in, and it made me a 3D model that was in Blender like right away. Like
Mhm.
no, didn't touch it, just off the shelf, and it worked. But like it has issues with like if it's not a symmetrical thing, it assumes symmetries and all this kind of stuff, and so it's not right. Like it is if you're
Right.
into that, I think it's like off the shelf. You can just do that now, which is really cool. And if
Right.
you're interested, I can point you to some of those. If you want to try it out, I can help you get that stuff set up yourself.
Yeah.
But I think one thing you're gonna, well, I would recommend being wary of is kind of what you just said is like, I remember when I was in grad school and at the time Formz was like one of the made CAD, and they like introduced the spiral stair function. Like it was easy to, like it was a function now. Now you didn't have to manually do it. I mean, now with Grasshopper, it's like bonkers, but suddenly there's like spiral stairs all over the place in people's designs. And the same thing happened with the manipulation of curves even, right? And so I'm like, who's leading who in that way? And there's considering you said you're a product guy, like there's in the physical product world, like there's ceramicists who are keeping the human in the loop to create quirks. So there'll be some amount of the production of the vessel, say, is a loop, but there's always an imperfection. So they're always one-offs, for example. So these kinds of things to create uniqueness, la la la. I think there's just a huge open creative field for you to explore there, that you can own all that.
Yeah,
It can be
it's
unique to you.
interesting. It's like I love working with really creative people, and like my catchphrase is like passion has value. It's like if you're passionate about something, like go do it. And like I think that if you're passionate about like creating art, like this, like I love making tools that help other people do what they're trying to do, right? And it's like I'm not the creative guy, but I love helping a creative person, kind of achieve what they're doing. So I really agree with you, and I think that like there is no way you'd ever create a product that would would replace that, right? Like if a person wants to do it, like there's value in that. The uniqueness is
Well,
always going
there's
to be there.
like the John Cage's tuning of a piano versus someone else's tuning of a piano. So even in the instrumentalization of things, there's still who's playing it. So in my mind, it's like, who do you want to collaborate with would be an interesting
Yeah,
next thing to do, because
it,
you'll suddenly go far because of what they're, how they want to play the tool you're making. So you can
yeah.
tweak the tool to what they're doing.
No, it's funny, and just not to, I don't know if going on tangents is allowed in this group, but that's something that like I've been
Only
fascinated
tangents, only tangents.
with as well as like so there's the I you can't see it because my door open, but there was a quote on that I saw, and I asked her for permission to create a little poster, and it was like, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do my art, not AI to do my art so that I can do my laundry and dishes. And I'm like, that's like, what it is. And I think that um, oh, what was I gonna say? It's like I lost my train of thought. But yeah, it's I think had a really oh well, lost it. It's gone.
I think one thing, sorry, one thing about the process, right? It would be, I think people are forgiving of fidelity if they can get some control. So used to be that, I forget, it was Photoshop LE, the light version they had. You had these options, right? More contrast, less contrast. And you got a preview, right? More contrast, more saturation, less saturation, more details, less sharpness, and so on, right? Which was a very easy and clicky way of giving a user a sense of agency in the creation of the thing, but not very much fine-tuned control over the thing. And you might instead of I'm not saying you should ignore the fidelity issue of translating the model into print and all that, but like if you can focus on give users an interface. If you think of about this as a consumer thing, right? So give people an interface where they can go more weird, less weird, more round, more sharpy, more caricature, more realistic, right? Because I think that's also one of the allures that people have with like the image generating things, right? You're seemingly being creative, but you're offloading much of the work onto the AI, right? But that people like it because they can hold it up and say, "I made this," right? And we don't have to go into whether you did or
Um,
not, but like just for you for a user interface and giving people a sense of control.
yeah.
I mean, then I think people will forgive the fidelity because they could go, well, I clicked the button, so it's my fault that the dog has twice as large head as it should have, or whatever, or it's not perfect. Of course, if you're doing like if you want to do like perfect fits for your Magic Gathering cards, which are standardized size and thickness and all that. Of course, that's where your smart application actually has a predefined size for this kind of card and all that. But for all the rest, all the like the arty stuff, if you hand over the control to people, I think they would give
Yeah.
janky look.
I just want to say thank you so much for that comment because like that's something I've internalized for a long time, but had a hard time concisely expressing. And your control is equals forgiveness is a really succinct way of saying that. So, yeah, totally. Thanks. I did actually remember my other point was like one of the reasons why I'm mostly thinking about like hobbyists and my head is also in like the children's like educational space because it's like those are spaces where I'm not necessarily trying to replace an artist or whatever it is, but I'm trying to help the user do the thing for the first time or get into something. So um anyway, yeah, thanks for
It felt like notes of who remembers Kai's Power Tools? Scott remembers. You remember Scott, remember that?
Say a little more. It sounds familiar, but
Kai's Power Tools was like this wacky, inscrutable interface for image manipulation. I think it was a plugin for early Photoshop, and
hmm
it would open up and it would be like you looking at like a pile of rocks with a bunch of knobs and levers on it or something like that. It was just very,
Yeah.
it was purposely a wacky interface, and I even think the idioms for the adjustments were very also inscrutable. They weren't instrumental
hmm
descriptions like contrast, saturation, vibrance. It was like, I don't know, more helium or something. It's just weird.
Right. I like how Mateus like more Sharpie, more roundy.
Yeah, exactly,
Or
exactly.
whatever Ben's vocabulary or whoever his collaborator is, how do they talk about like what adjectives do they use when describing how they play or what they're trying to explore in when they perform or stuff like that would
Yeah.
be cool input.
Yeah, at least opens a conversation about like how all the, all these tools generally we assume that very they're very, yeah, instrumental, I guess is the only word that I can come up with, like where the expectation is like, no, the image needs more contrast. I remember the first wet photography studio that I
hmm
worked in as a gopher, the guy'd be like, just make it a little snappier. little snappier. I'd be like, what? Okay, I'll try to get some snap into it. But I knew, you get a sense of what they mean when you're
Yeah.
hanging out with them enough, and they're like, this has got to be, this is going to go into, the newspaper printing process. So we need more contrast. But he would say, make it snappy, make it
Yeah.
snappy.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Ben. Appreciate that. Kind of game timing it. It's good stuff.
Thanks for letting me share. It's a fun group. I'm looking forward to joining the future.
Awesome. I'd like to hear that. Sabrina, what do you got? What's going on up there?
Dramatic muting.
You're
You're
still
mute.
muted.
You're
It's like,
muted.
yeah, you unmute yourself for half a second and then it goes mute again.
Okay,
Still.
it's because I'm gonna have to hold it down. Somehow I have too
No
many
way.
devices that have now controlled my other computer, and so I'm gonna try and see whether it'll shut down and then reconnect
As she
back
looks
to
around the room for like
I'm like minority reporting it over here. There we go. We're back. We're back. Okay. So I'm not working with AI. I am not that sophisticated, but I thought of I had a chance to connect with Sean a couple weeks ago and we connected with Julian, but a couple of years ago, I had the absolute pleasure of having our innovation group dissolved at a post-secondary institution because they weren't ready for actual innovation. But as part of that, there was an industrial organizational psychologist that I got to work with. So she was focused primarily on leadership and how do we start to think about leadership differently. And she does a lot of cool stuff, everything from indigenous ways of knowing, you name it. And as I was playing in the world of foresight in that role, she goes, I think this is a missing piece. And I'm kind of tired of all of the reports that talk about this is the future of technology. This is the future of objects, resources, those sort of things, but we haven't reimagined what leadership could actually be. And when we got people together to try to do this, there were lots of struggles to be able to do that, which led us to say, instead of us writing scenarios and walking through it, especially if they're irrelevant, what if we created a game around it? And so we took one of our favorite games, Cards Against Humanity, and used that same format to say, like, what would it look like to create ways that people could reimagine leadership in the face of changes that honestly, some of the cards are even outdated, facing us now or facing us in the future, to reinforce around practice, rehearsing, and that level of imagination, and the big struggle around imagination prompts, or having people laugh or point to some of the ridiculous things that we see time and time again, that we're not willing to change. But when you start to phrase it in a fun or interesting way on a card, that there's new and different conversations that come from it. And so I'll pull up a little bit more of the background around this, but the reason I thought I might as well share it was the fact that we're on a journey to constantly keep this updated. And as of late, in addition to this being a game that is sort of usable wherever, we're working on expansion pack. Someone asked us whether there was, what would it look like for this to be a future of thinking as leaders, or the topics or the scenarios were around how thinking could change. And so I was like, why not just ask all of you what you guys are thinking about, or those sort of imagination or prompts. And so this is a bit of the premise of what we were doing. So it's a card game. We've done it for the last couple of years. Sean now has a copy, so we'll see how he comes through using it and the insights from it. But like, these were the premises around, we need to explore a variety of diverse approaches, constantly challenging those orthodoxies of everyone's asking this psychologist for like, what's your like 4-part framework? But the tenet behind this is that leadership as we know it is unsustainable, and it's going to be hard to pin it. It's going to be contextual. So how do we create fun in different ways for multiple perspectives, unique tension between comfort and growth? And ultimately the discussion, I will say, it's gotten to a point where I listen in on the conversations of those who play it, and I go, this needs to be something that someone could not necessarily script, but becomes something cheesy like a video podcast where like you explore these sort of features and you start diving into it and it's very super emergent. So it's played the exact same way as Cards Against Humanity, but the big difference is that we're asking people to pause, often because they don't know each other, and have conversations about this and start to expose sort of those blind spots that exist or what could be, and starting to ask what if. And so this is an example of like how someone might play, is that like one of the cards is like, it's the year 2050 and an AI ethics board now scrutinizes every leadership decision. How do you lead in this? And there's a variety of current through plausible possible cards. And so like this could be the round of responses that people have. And we ask the decider to choose the card that they are most that they favor the most. We don't put a rubric around it, but you'll see people start to sort of be very comfortable, try to be bold, ask why, and then we go through these sort of questions. And so again, my curiosity with all of you is I am working on a bunch of different things, but I love people's imagination around plausible futures and responses and the creativity. And we might not be able to get into it today, but let's see whether I'll show you some of the examples of what could exist for some of the cards. So like this is the one of the two current sets that we have. So these could be the response cards, everything. And if you've played Cards Against Humanity, you know that you might get a hand that has absolutely nothing applicable. So it could be a total metaphor that someone needs to extend from it. But it's a diverse way of saying, how might we lead differently tomorrow? So if we have time, if people want to play or engage, there are two different questions that I have. One, what are some like scenarios that you think are important that leaders start to, interact with, imagine, or practice how they might respond to in obviously fun and interesting ways? Or what might you love to see or makes you giggle if you saw like a leader do it? And it's giggle in a terrible, I'm laughing because I'm slightly crying inside, or I'm laughing because it's also out there, but totally plausible. And I would love to see that in the world. So that's kind of the ask. If we want, I could show, additional cards and things like that. This original two sets were around a diverse number of topics, but when I go back to it again, to think about the future of thinking, this request or this ask has become it's my own ask of seeing a lot of people talking about critical thought, cognitive thinking, how that could evolve. And it's something that a lot of leaders that I interact with are not reckoning with. So why not create a fun and interesting way for them to engage around it? So I'm going to stop talking. If you've got questions or clarifying questions, or you're like, what if you did this? Or what have you been thinking about that? I'm all for anything.
This is fascinating because I'm working with some friends on workshops for training engineering teams and product engineering teams for AI. And a lot of that is technical, like how do you actually use things. But I introduced impact mapping, and I've done this in previous places I've managed as a way to align engineering with business goals. And that's a real, management technique. That's a traditional management technique that kind of is next level up from agile in certain situations. And in order to get, and the two things that are interesting about your project for me in that context is that in impact mapping, you have to understand what your goal is and understand who the actors are. That is, who are the people that are impacted by your decisions. And I've essentially done something like this, but yours is much, much cleaner and better. And I hadn't thought of using Cards Against Humanity as a metaphor. And so I love that you're trying to help people think, which is what I'm trying to do. And actually, the toughest decisions we make as a team with my team is that my partners are very technical, even more than me, if that's possible. And they want to kind of talk about the SDLC and they want to use things like acronyms like that. And I kind of almost throw up a little in my mouth when I hear this. No, like we have to trust that these people are intelligent, technical people, and we don't have to lecture them. What we need to do is help them expand the way that they think about the future, because basically everything that you've been taught about how to build software is just going to be different now. Like it's already changing. Anyway, I just want to say I love this kind of way of thinking about using Cards Against Humanity, and I am completely like your biggest cheerleader. I think you're right. People have to teach thinking. That's the only thing that matters. And so the technical stuff, we don't even know what that's going to be. And same with leadership. How do you manage? We already got screwed up with the pandemic, right? That already threw everyone off with remote. And this comes along. Like, what is it? What is hiring? Why do we even have to bring people on? How do, there's all kinds of questions that I'm sure you're thinking about. We need to think about thinking. And I think this is a way forward. Great stuff.
No, I appreciate that. And even just what you said around like the hiring, like every conversation that I'm having, my collaborator, the psychologist, is kind of like, stop being productive because we've got hundreds of cards in the background, but I don't want to miss some of these thoughts. So that's great. Scott.
Yeah, I just was thinking about, well, because you're Canadian, like how an indigenous population in BC is going to make decisions differently than in the Maritimes or something. So like, is there a way to, I mean, using the model, right? The model works great. I'm just thinking, is there a way to um, easily contextualize this a bit more within the kind of organization the person already works for? Because like leadership has a lot to do with knowing what is persuasive to the culture of the organization, like data, numbers, stories, whatever. And so if there could be, essentially there are a series of cards that are contextual cards that could help with that kind of. I put in the chat a
Okay.
couple references to things. I think that would
Amazing.
help tweak. Everything else seems fine. I think it's just that my answer is always predicated on, well, who am I leading?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that feels like the missing piece.
Yeah, and I think like, so we've gone sort of two different directions of contextual. So like I've used it with folks, leadership at Mount Royal University, for example. And there's this desire to make it contextual, and there are some asks in different parts of the world of like, make one for education in general. And so I haven't chose to go back to, higher education, but it seems to suck me in. And so we can create those. In a lot of these cases, some people are using this as an entry point to then infer and lead to those discussions. So I always sit in this sort of interesting tension of, yes, who's it serving and how do they lead? But as like a never going to take a PhD, but would love to take a PhD kind of person, the emergence of this is really interesting because you'll start to see themes come out around how they lead versus it being prescribed around how they lead. It'll start to emerge in that. To your point of sort of indigenous and those sort of folks, we came at it and we understood our biases being very sort of Western centric. So we've also been trying to go out to different communities, and we've had some partners in the global South be able to help create some cards to provoke thinking that would be closer to where they and how they would like to lead, which we think is really awesome because when we bring that back, it's a different way that maybe some more like Western or colonized areas can challenge their way of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, just within Western, there's still, there's an organization where the structure of the organization is extremely clear. People have titles versus it's
Yep.
meritocracy, blah, blah, blah. So I think you could just, have cards like that in terms of that help
Oh, totally.
people. Oh, okay, I'm in this
Oh,
kind of
people exist.
company. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are definitely ones that you're either that, and that's why I was like, I can't show you all 600 plus existing in addition to the several others, but those are exactly, that's great, Scott. I can't remember who was first.
I think, I don't know who was. Was it Sean? No. Oh, Karis. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, I apologize for not having my camera on. The thing is, I am taking the opportunity to trim my ends, so it would be too distracting. So I am thinking about something in the context of AI. Is that recently I've been watching webinars or conferences about people who take their decision differently, meaning not through with logic, but either through intuition. So there was someone who he just doesn't take any decision without intuition nowadays, and he seems to be very successful, and it seems to be the right decisions. And I was thinking about this could be kind of a human advantage on AI, something where humans might be more suited because we know that we have these um, something similar to the neurons in our gut, for instance, intestines. That AI cannot have these embodied, differentiated intelligences that humans have. So, is there an exploration of that? Another example, I've watched recently a conference by a man who had very he was as a policeman he had very good results, and when he's like the hierarchy came and asked him how he does that, he said, basically, I just pray, ask God, and he gives me the answers. And he had extraordinary results. um, and the thing is, AI can do that.
Right.
So there is sorry for that. There is a question about, can we trust AI? Can we trust only the logical side of things, even though we know that AI mimics the way the brain works? Is it enough? And is it not a danger? Will it impoverish our world and our way of thinking? Like like from the course I see, there's a lot of interesting AI thinking that it can know better than humans just because it has more data. And we may have less data, but different ways of thinking in our
Totally.
body. And so that's kind of
Totally.
what I was thinking about. And about the indigenous way of thinking, uh, I I don't remember the name of the program, but I know there's a program in Canada that's thinking about how you can rethink building AI from the perspective of indigenous knowledge. I don't know if this is the same program or something else.
Yeah, it's different. All of these are incredibly useful. So these are the kind of inputs that I'd love to sort of bring to life in that sort of future of thinking expansion pack. So this is great. Thank you so much, Karis. Sean?
Yeah, I've got the cards. I'm really excited about tinkering with them. Something that made me wonder, because I do leadership training in healthcare, is and using scenarios is how these cards represent sort of a kind of range of actions that all have consequences. And so there could be really neat ways of thinking about sequences of action. So if people sort of had access to a bunch of cards, like how would they line them up? Like, and how do they actually think about change, right? Because that's often like maybe sometimes hard to perceive is like, do we see things as a living system? Do we see them as a mechanical system? Like, what's the sort of like epistemology that we
Right.
bring in how we think about leadership and decisions? And can this bring that forth? It also made me wonder when I look at something like take a sabbatical to learn, wonder, and be curious. Let's just say that's an idea that wins out in the game or something. Like, could an next part be like, well, you now actually got to do. There's a design fiction piece here. It's like, well,
Totally.
create that itinerary for that. So moving from sort of just a very high level description of a thing is actually now build it and now do it. So how do we move people from sort of the game and the ideas into the embodiment of it? Could be really fascinating. So
I love it.
I think it's a
I love the ideas. Anyone who wants to try, collaborate. That's the whole point. Is like, we'll just see how this all works out. Those are great ideas. Ben, maybe?
Yeah,
I
sorry,
don't,
I was just
yeah,
trying to like
yeah,
down the lower hand. I just wanted to like I love the idea. It's great. Love Cards Against Humanity and like, from a game design perspective, I like it's so expandable and this is like a really good version. I love it. I'm like, where can you put a link where I could buy it? I don't know if I missed that or something. But I just like because I just wanted to ask it for a clarification, but like I'd love to help in some way, but like what kind of help, like what's your goal with getting help? Like are you trying to solve a problem with the existing game, or you mentioned an expansion, but like do you have a specific goal that you're trying to work towards, or um is there a
Yeah.
problem, like something new, or is there a problem with the existing one, or how?
No, it's like
Yeah.
so what I always found in the original ask was to do something at South by Southwest around reimagining leadership. And I was like, I don't know who the hell's gonna be there. So I had to create something that was somewhat could be leveraged by anyone. I could have someone from media, an independent, like who knows. So really the question that I came to with here is I can't track all of the different ideas that could serve as imagination prompts or future scenario challenges or opportunities. So I am constantly asking people from like a collective intelligence standpoint. And so that's really where I thought here, but I've gotten so many other amazing thoughts at that as well. And so that's where I'm always on the hunt, which is why there's a very long list of cards to continue to come out. But that's because the world keeps changing. And those different edges and the different decisions that you can make that have consequences. Nothing is perfect in here. From like, there's like a do nothing card or crawl up in the fetal position in the corner of your home office card to like some possible alien interaction sort of thing. But I'm like, any of these are going to spark things for people to say, this is ridiculous, or be like, we actually thought of an alien in this way, and in sort of like analogous thinking that it can spark. So if you've got any thoughts or ideas, I am open
Yeah.
to all areas.
I mean, so like from a game design perspective, and it's interesting that someone brought up the context and the contextual stuff, because like that's like the hard part, right? It's like on the surface, you just have like the question cards and the answer cards, and then as like artifacts that exist in the game, and then for you have your asker per in every round, your asker and your respondents, right? And it seems very, simple. But the
Seems simple.
problem to solve is like, well, why is everyone sitting at that table right now playing this game? And essentially, there's like, well, you're marketing the product, it's for leadership, right? So everyone there is already set into the context of like, we're here for leadership. One of the reasons why Cards Against Humanity, Apples to Apples, like, works so well is it like it works so well in all of these different contexts, right? So all the questions that are there, it's like, well, if we're just trying to have fun, it's like that's fine. Or if we're trying to be, naughty, that. And it's like I remember like the joke was like, well, if you're the new player at the table, you're never gonna win Cards Against Humanity because you don't know the person's sense of humor. Because most people are playing it to have fun, right? And so I think like it's almost like a non-problem where it's like there's so many different contexts. So like rather than trying to like focus in on like really specific stuff, it's like how do you create those general ones that each individual group can just like add it, like, hey, we're here to talk about BC, so like that's why we're here, kind of thing.
Totally.
It's really interesting. I'd love to chat more sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Eduardo?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea. I think like I love how it kind of like removes like a lot of the stigma and pressure that comes with, like some of these like kind of tough and hard like kind of topics and situations that come up. Like you're just kind of using humor to really kind of take away that stigma and pressure, because like the person doesn't have to have the right answer anymore because they just have a select number of cards in their hand. So I think that kind of takes a lot of it away. So I think that's kind of nice. And also just adds like some jokes in between, some like levity to the situation that makes it nice. Like in terms of like making this relevant for different groups, I think that's kind of like an interesting topic, because that's hard. And like more cards is never enough cards. It almost feels like, and like and Cards Against Humanity started doing this like interesting thing where like they just give you empty cards and you can fill it out yourself, because like you and your friends have your own inside jokes that you would love to use as answers or whatever it might be. So maybe there's like something like along those lines
Love it.
that could be helpful, like in making it relevant for groups that maybe you're just not as familiar with, or they have the very specific niche things or question scenarios they want to address. yeah, just
I
just
love
an idea.
I love a blank card. This is an ongoing.
Yeah.
You can go through Julian to find out where I'm at if you've got a blank card that shows up on your desk around this. So, Sandro, and then Heather, because I know I'm running out of time.
Hey, Sabrina, thank you again. I'm fascinated by this idea of installing software to simulate your coworkers' feelings before you send that angry email. So that could be built.
Mhm.
I was thinking of this as almost like the kind of finance software that's coming out now to predict the book, where you're trying to guess or find out or predict the investment that or let's say the organization, think of everyone as a trader in your organization. You're trying to predict like what political capital, what sentiment, what kind of where the tension's going to be, and what people are going to spend, and what people are going to cost on how they interact with each other in an organization. And I don't know if this is just a kind of a throwaway thought, or maybe there is this such software. I haven't heard of it, but this has got me thinking a lot about how to gauge the sentiment of an organization. And so I just wanted to mention that I may come back to you with a prototype for this.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I love the prototypes. There's the guy who runs the AI film festival in Seattle who's like, I'd love to make like really terrible AI videos to pair with some of these cards for like any companies that were working on it so that they have some sort of visual to it. Heather.
Kind of piggybacking off of what Sandra said, in terms of like using these to gauge sentiment in the organization. I think sometimes we can conflate the idea of leading and leadership with being at a particular like role in a company. So I would love to see, like how does this play out in, potentially like different roles, like with people from different roles in the company, kind of like taking a bottom-up approach or like turning it inside out a little bit, and even like what kinds of cards might some of those folks write in response to
Right.
anyways, just a
I
thought.
love it. I love it. Thank you. I think it's now Julian's. I saw him pop up. I'll drop my email anyways in the chat box or a LinkedIn, whatever. I'll do LinkedIn even though I hate it, and then we'll escape to email. So thank you all.
Yeah, cool. And that's super good stuff, Sabrina, not unexpectedly. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I went down the rabbit hole in my head as I was listening, and I was jotting down some notes about the the design fiction work kit. So that's the first thing that kind of comes to my mind. Just generally, I'm not saying that it's the same thing at all, but I don't know. I just started thinking about like the interesting ways in which you could, I don't know. I just started thinking about like because I built this kind of like card player application so that I didn't have to print more of the box sets, even though I love the cards.
Yeah.
But there are these tariffs, which just make it like not,
Tariffs, printing, shipping. Yeah.
it's not gonna work at this particular moment. Which is fine. And so I just started thinking about, I don't know, like the semantics of the cards that you're showing are so rich. And just thinking of ways to, are there facilities by which the, I don't know, it doesn't have to be like an AI thing, but it's on the mind, could um help help close that gap between, I think what I've experienced for some people playing these card games is like there's a sort of like, I don't get it, like I'm not sure how to respond to this. I'm not sure what, or yeah, literally I don't know how to respond to this. Not that they're frustrated, but it's an unusual mechanic for people who are not used to prompts, prompt based card uh games or facilitation techniques or that kind of thing. So that's where my mind starts going in terms of ways to contribute and help you with what you're building.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, the printing, yes, is constant, and I'd like any card to be able to go live immediately. Then there's the tangible side of things. But yeah, um, I everything that you were saying is all relevant and appreciated. And like, just so that sort of like they don't know how to respond, there's many an experience that even depending on their mindset of like they're looking to past reference or playbooks of like how they would respond, so they struggle to choose a card, or they actually don't understand what something like an avatar is. So I've had to think about like how does someone get that like Cole's notes light on a particular topic, not enough to know deeply, but enough to sort of conceptualize what is being sort of talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you for everyone's. If you've got more thoughts, you know where to find me.
Yeah. Yep. There's your LinkedIn.
Yeah, we need to escape to email after that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know which is better. Emails like a
I know.
raging fire from my inbox.
LinkedIn's got the ick factor right now though. Yeah.
Does it have an ick factor? What's the ick factor? That it's like all self-promotional?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I appreciate some people, so I don't discredit it altogether, but also I don't notice as much. I'm sitting in front of an email. There are mechanisms or rituals that I have to follow up on email. The rituals aren't always existing in LinkedIn, so some things fall through the cracks.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's a wrap. Chewy the dog keeps looking at me. When's our walk happen? Appreciate you all showing up. I think I'm liking this format. This is working. And then if anyone wants to share, next week, there's the sign up thing on the website. Office hours. That's the sign up deal. And hopefully see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, all.
Yeah, enjoy the weekend. Take care, you guys.
Thank you.
Take care, all.
Bye.